To our amazing viewers at Cheating Tales Lab, welcome and thank you. Your presence makes these stories worth sharing. We'd love to hear, which part of the world are you joining us from? Let us know. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Foundation Cracks. Rob Mitchell had built his life on 3 pillars: discipline, loyalty, and precision. At 42, he carried himself with the measured confidence of a man who had spent 8 years in the Marines before transitioning into private security consulting. His weathered hands bore the scars of deployment overseas, but his sharp gray eyes reflected a mind that had learned to read people like battlefield terrain. The suburban house in Riverside stood as testament to his success. A 2-story colonial with a manicured lawn that he maintained with military precision every Saturday morning. Inside, family photos lined the hallway. Rob in his dress blues at his wedding to Brenda 15 years ago, little Tyler's first day of school, family vacations to Yellowstone and the Grand Canyon. Each picture captured moments that once felt eternal. Brenda had been 25 when they met, a bubbly blonde waitress at a diner near Camp Pendleton. Rob, freshly returned from his second tour in Afghanistan, had been drawn to her infectious laugh and the way she seemed untouched by the darkness he carried. She represented everything he'd fought to protect: innocence, hope, the American dream made flesh. Their son Tyler had inherited Brenda's bright blue eyes, but Rob's stubborn jaw. Now 17, the boy had grown distant over the past year, spending more time locked in his room or hanging with friends Rob didn't particularly like. Typical teenage rebellion, Brenda had assured him. Boys need space to become men. But Rob's instincts, honed by years of surviving in hostile territory, whispered that something was wrong. The signs were subtle. Brenda's new interest in expensive makeup, her sudden enthusiasm for girls' nights out, that lasted until dawn, the way she guarded her phone like classified intelligence. When he'd tried to address his concerns, she'd dismissed them with practiced ease. "You're being paranoid, Rob. Not everything is a threat assessment." That Tuesday evening, Rob returned from a 3-day consultation job in Phoenix, his duffel bag slung over one shoulder as he climbed the front steps. The house felt different, a staleness in the air, as if secrets had been fermenting in his absence. Tyler's backpack lay abandoned by the door, shoes kicked off carelessly in the entryway. "I'm home," Rob called out, his voice echoing through the quiet house. Brenda appeared at the top of the stairs, her hair tousled and wearing a silk robe Rob had never seen before. "You're early," she said, a note of panic flickering across her features before she composed herself. Flight landed ahead of schedule. Rob studied her face, noting the flush in her cheeks, the way she clutched the robe's collar. "Everything all right?" "Of course. Just getting out of the shower." The lie rolled off her tongue with practiced ease, but Rob caught the tremor in her voice. "Tyler's at soccer practice. Should be home soon." Rob nodded, filing away the inconsistency. Tyler had quit soccer 2 months ago, claiming he wanted to focus on his part-time job at the local auto shop. He'd watch from the kitchen window as his son came and went at irregular hours, always with that same secretive expression Brenda now wore. Over dinner, Brenda chattered about her day at the marketing firm where she worked part-time, but her stories felt rehearsed, lacking the spontaneous details that made real experiences believable. Tyler picked at his food, texting constantly despite Rob's rule about phones at the table. "Who are you talking to?" Rob asked. Tyler shrugged without looking up. "Friends." "Which friends?" "Dad, chill. It's not a big deal." The disrespect might have been typical teenage attitude, but combined with everything else, it felt like another piece of a puzzle Rob was only beginning to understand. He'd spent years reading hostile intentions in foreign faces. Recognizing deception in his own family proved far more painful. That night, as Brenda slept beside him, Rob stared at the ceiling and processed the intelligence he'd gathered. His wife was having an affair, he was 90% certain. The question was with whom, and how deep the betrayal ran. In the military, the best response to enemy action was patient surveillance followed by overwhelming force. Some habits died hard. The next morning, Rob announced he'd be working from home for the rest of the week, watching as both Brenda and Tyler exchanged a quick glance of concern. "That's unexpected," Brenda said, her coffee cup trembling slightly in her hands. "Good to mix things up," Rob replied, settling into his home office with a clear view of the driveway. He'd learned long ago that the best vantage point was often the most obvious one. Chapter 2. Intelligence Gathering. Rob's surveillance began immediately. Years of counterintelligence training had taught him that the enemy always revealed themselves through patterns, and his family was no exception. He installed a small GPS tracker on Brenda's car, a device he'd originally purchased for a client who suspected corporate espionage. What it revealed over the next 3 days painted a clear picture of betrayal. Instead of going to work, Brenda drove to Maplewood Heights, an upscale neighborhood across town. She spent hours at a particular address, 847 Oakmont Drive. Property records, easily accessed through his professional contacts, revealed the owner as Craig Hoffman, 34, recently divorced, working as a sales manager at a luxury car dealership. Rob remembered the name. Craig had been Tyler's baseball coach 2 summers ago, a smooth-talking charmer who'd flirted shamelessly with the team mothers while his own marriage crumbled. Rob had disliked him immediately. Something about the man's practiced smile and the way he positioned himself as the fun, understanding authority figure while actual fathers like Rob were painted as rigid disciplinarians. The pieces fell into place with military precision. Craig's divorce had been finalized 6 months ago. Brenda's behavior changes had started around the same time. Tyler's sudden hero worship of his former coach, his new disdain for his father's rules and expectations, it all made sickening sense. On Thursday afternoon, Rob followed Brenda to Craig's house, parking 3 blocks away with a clear line of sight. Through his binoculars, he watched his wife of 15 years enter another man's home with the casual familiarity of someone who belonged there. She stayed for 3 hours. That evening, Tyler came home wearing a new leather jacket that cost more than his part-time job at the auto shop could afford. "Nice jacket," Rob observed. Tyler's face flushed. "Coach Craig got it for me. Early graduation present. Generous of him. He's a good guy, Dad. He actually listens to me, you know? Doesn't treat me like some kid who can't make his own decisions." The manipulation was expertly done, Rob had to admit. Craig had systematically undermined Rob's authority while positioning himself as the understanding father figure. Classic psychological warfare. Turn the target's allies against them before moving in for the kill. Friday brought the final confirmation Rob needed. Using his security firm's resources, he accessed Craig's social media accounts and found dozens of photos and messages that painted a clear picture. Beach trips, expensive dinners, intimate moments, all documented with the casual arrogance of people who believe they were untouchable. But it was Tyler's presence in many of the photos that cut deepest. His son, grinning beside Craig at baseball games, in restaurants, at the man's house. The boy had been fully integrated into his mother's new life, and from the timeline of the photos, it had been happening for months. Rob printed everything, organizing the evidence with the methodical precision of a military briefing. Photos, GPS logs, financial records showing unexplained purchases on Brenda's credit cards, expensive lingerie, dinners for 2 at restaurants Rob had never been to, a weekend getaway to Napa Valley while she'd claimed to be visiting her sister. That Saturday morning, as Rob maintained his lawn with his usual precision, he made his decision. In the military, there were rules of engagement, codes of conduct, diplomatic solutions. But this wasn't war. This was worse. This was betrayal from within, and it demanded a response that would leave no room for doubt or mercy. He would confront them all, but not yet. First, he needed to understand the full scope of their plans. If they intended to push him out of his own life, he wanted to see exactly how they planned to do it. Sometimes the best strategy was to let the enemy overextend themselves before striking back. Sunday evening, as the family sat through another tense dinner filled with lies and stolen glances, Rob made his choice. He would give them rope, and he would watch them hang themselves with it. Then, when they were completely exposed and vulnerable, he would show them what happened to people who betrayed Robert Mitchell. The war was coming, but this time, he would choose the battlefield. Chapter 3. The Ambush. The following Tuesday, Rob received a text from Brenda. "Working late tonight. Don't wait up." It was the opening he'd been waiting for. Instead of staying home, he drove to Craig's house and positioned himself in the shadows across the street. Sure enough, Brenda's car was already in the driveway. But this time, he wasn't just observing. Rob had spent the weekend preparing, calling in favors from his military contacts and private security network. He'd learned that Craig had been bragging to his friends about his upgrade, a devoted wife and successful stepson, plus the bonus of taking down the rigid military asshole who didn't deserve either. The disrespect burned, but Rob channeled his rage into cold calculation. Craig's arrogance would be his downfall. At 11 p.m., both Brenda and Craig's phones began receiving anonymous messages, screenshots of their social media activities, GPS tracking data, even photos taken through Craig's insufficiently curtained windows. The messages included a simple note. Interesting how public your private life has become. Rob watched through his night vision scope as lights frantically switched on throughout Craig's house. Shadows moved behind curtains as the panic set in. His phone buzzed with an incoming call from Brenda. Rob? Rob, are you awake? What's wrong? He kept his voice carefully neutral. Someone's been watching us. Following us. They have pictures. Pictures of what? The silence stretched like a held breath. I think we should talk when I get home. I think we should. But Brenda didn't come home that night. Or the next. On Thursday, Rob's patience finally paid off when Tyler burst through the front door, his face flushed with excitement and something that looked disturbingly like anticipation. Dad, we need to talk. Rob looked up from his laptop, noting his son's defensive posture, the way he stood near the door as if ready to flee. I'm listening. She's been seeing someone. Coach Craig. They're in love, and they want to be together. The casual cruelty of it, using his own son to deliver the news, was almost impressive in its callousness. Rob kept his expression neutral. I see. The thing is, Tyler shifted uncomfortably, some of his bravado faltering under his father's steady gaze. They think it would be better if you moved out. Just temporarily, until they can figure out the divorce stuff. They think I should move out of my own house. It's not like that, Dad. It's just, this is hard on everyone. Mom's happy for the first time in years, and Craig really cares about both of us. He said he'd help me with college applications, maybe even get me a job at the dealership. Rob closed his laptop with deliberate precision. And what do you think about all this, Tyler? For a moment, his son's mask slipped, revealing the uncertainty beneath. I think people deserve to be happy. And you and Mom haven't been happy together for a long time. So I should just pack up and leave. Just until things get sorted out legally. Craig's got money, Dad. He can take care of us better then. Tyler trailed off, realizing what he'd almost said. Better than I can. That's not what I meant. But it was exactly what he'd meant, and they both knew it. Rob stood slowly, his 6-foot frame imposing even in casual clothes. Tyler took an instinctive step backward. Tell your mother and her boyfriend that I'll be out by this weekend. Relief flooded Tyler's face. Really? Just like that? Just like that. What Tyler didn't understand, what none of them understood, was that retreat was sometimes the most devastating form of attack. Rob had learned in Afghanistan that the enemy often revealed their true intentions only when they believed they'd won. Brenda and Craig thought they were claiming victory, but they were actually walking into the kill zone. That evening, Rob began packing his belongings with military efficiency. Each item went into labeled boxes, each box into his truck or a storage unit he'd rented across town. He worked methodically, ignoring the sounds of celebration from upstairs as Tyler talked excitedly on the phone about Dad finally seeing reason. Friday afternoon, as Rob loaded the last of his boxes, Brenda finally returned home. She looked nervous but determined, Craig hovering behind her like a shadow trying to claim substance. Rob, I want you to know this isn't personal, she began, her voice taking on the tone she used when explaining things to slow children. We just want what's best for everyone. Craig stepped forward, extending his hand with the confident smile that had probably worked on dozens of other men's wives. No hard feelings, right? Sometimes these things just happen. Rob looked at the offered hand for a long moment, then turned away without taking it. Craig's smile faltered slightly, but he recovered quickly. Come on, man. We're all adults here. From upstairs, Tyler called down. Dad, you need help with anything? The casual dismissal in his son's voice, as if Rob were a departing maintenance worker rather than the man who'd raised him, crystallized everything Rob needed to know about where loyalties lay. I've got it, Rob called back. He walked to his truck, threw his final duffel bag into the bed, and climbed behind the wheel. Through the windshield, he could see his family's new arrangement. Brenda and Craig standing close together on the front porch, Tyler appearing at his bedroom window with an expression of relief. Rob pulled out his phone and made one call. "Danny? It's Rob Mitchell. Remember that conversation we had about what happens to people who cross the wrong veteran? Yeah, it's time to collect on that favor." The voice on the other end was gravelly, amused. "How deep do you want to go, brother?" Rob looked one last time at the house he'd worked 15 years to buy, at the family he'd sacrificed everything to protect, all the way to the bottom. As he drove away, Rob's phone buzzed with a text from Tyler. "Thanks for being cool about this, Dad. Mom says you can visit on weekends if you want." Rob deleted the message without responding. Visiting hours were over. Chapter 4. The Network Activates. Rob's new temporary residence was a furnished apartment in a complex favored by divorced men and traveling contractors. Anonymous, functional, perfect for planning operations that required discretion. The walls were bare except for a single photo. His old Marine unit. 8 hard men who'd learned to depend on each other in places where dependence meant survival. Danny Kowalski arrived Tuesday evening, his massive frame filling Rob's doorway like an avalanche given human form. 20 years of construction work had added bulk to his military muscle, but his eyes remained sharp as broken glass. He'd been Rob's sergeant in Afghanistan, the kind of NCO who could make problems disappear with administrative precision. "So, your wife's playing house with some civilian," Danny said, accepting the beer Rob offered. "And your boy's chosen sides. Tyler's 17. He thinks Craig's going to buy him a car and get him into college." Rob's voice carried no emotion, but Danny had known him long enough to recognize the controlled fury beneath. Kids that age, they think with their dicks and their stomachs. What's the real play here? Rob spread photos across his coffee table, surveillance shots, financial records, social media screenshots. Craig Hoffman. 2 previous marriages, both ended in divorce. Pattern suggests he targets married women, uses their kids to solidify control, then moves on when the novelty wears off. Danny studied the pictures with professional interest. Serial predator. Gets worse. I did some digging through my contacts at the dealership. He's been skimming from his expense account, using company cars for personal trips, probably setting himself up for a bigger score before he disappears. So we expose him, let the law handle it. Rob shook his head. That's reactive. I want them to understand what they've lost, what they threw away. I want them to beg for forgiveness they'll never receive. Danny's grin was predatory. Now you're talking my language. What do you need? Over the next hour, Rob outlined his strategy with the methodical precision of a military briefing. Phase 1 would target Craig's financial stability and professional reputation. Phase 2 would isolate Brenda and make her question every choice she'd made. Phase 3 would demonstrate to Tyler the difference between a father and a temporary benefactor. The beauty of it, Rob explained, is that they'll do most of the damage to themselves. I'm just going to remove their safety nets and watch gravity work. Danny's contacts proved invaluable. Within 48 hours, Rob had access to Craig's employment records, financial history, and a detailed profile of his business practices. The man was exactly what Rob had suspected, a smooth-talking sociopath who viewed other people's lives as resources to be exploited. Friday morning brought the first strike. Craig arrived at work to find his boss, District Manager Patricia Hendricks, waiting in his office with 2 men in suits from corporate headquarters. The anonymous tip about his creative expense reporting had included detailed documentation that would have impressed an IRS auditor. Rob watched from across the street as Craig was escorted from the building 2 hours later, his desk contents in a cardboard box, his company car keys surrendered at the security desk. The man's face was ashen, his usual confidence replaced by the hollow look of someone who'd just realized their world was crumbling. But losing his job was just the opening move. That afternoon, Craig's landlord received an anonymous call about unusual activity at 847 Oakmont Drive, suspicious visitors, possible drug activity, complaints from neighbors about noise and property damage. The caller claimed to be a concerned citizen who'd noticed that kind of element moving into the neighborhood. By evening, Craig was dealing with an unscheduled inspection from both his landlord and local code enforcement, who discovered several violations that would require immediate and expensive remediation. Brenda, meanwhile, found herself fielding increasingly panicked calls from her new boyfriend as his carefully constructed life began falling apart. Rob had anticipated this stress-revealed character, and he wanted his wife to see exactly what kind of man she'd chosen over her family. The weekend brought Tyler's first taste of reality. With Craig's company car repossessed and his finances suddenly tight, the promised shopping trip for college supplies became an awkward conversation about temporary setbacks and needing to be more careful with money. Rob's phone rang Sunday evening. Tyler's voice was confused, slightly hurt. "Dad, could you loan Craig some money? Just until he gets back on his feet." The request was perfect, exactly what Rob had been waiting for. "Why would I do that, Tyler?" Because he's having some bad luck, and Mom's really stressed about it. Sounds like their problem to solve. "Dad, come on. We're still family. Are we?" Rob let the question hang in the air. "When you needed me to leave my own house, were we family then?" The silence stretched uncomfortably. Finally, Tyler said, "That was different." "How?" Another pause. "Look, never mind. I shouldn't have called." "Tyler." Rob's voice softened just slightly. "You can call me anytime. But your mother and her boyfriend made their choices. Now they get to live with the consequences." After hanging up, Rob poured himself a whiskey and reviewed his progress. Craig was unemployed, facing potential eviction, and watching his relationship with Brenda strain under financial pressure. Tyler was beginning to see cracks in his hero's facade. Brenda was discovering that leaving a stable marriage for passion came with a price tag she hadn't anticipated. And this was just the beginning. Chapter 5, Pressure Points. Craig's desperation made him reckless, exactly as Rob had calculated. Unemployed and facing mounting bills, he'd started reaching out to former colleagues, trying to leverage old relationships into new opportunities. What he didn't know was that Rob had systematically contacted those same people first, sharing concerns about Craig's stability issues and problems with boundaries. The whisper campaign was surgical in its precision. Rob never made direct accusations. He simply expressed worry about his ex-wife's new boyfriend, mentioned Craig's pattern of failed relationships, suggested that anyone doing business with him might want to be extra careful about their contracts and finances. In the tight-knit world of luxury car sales, reputation was everything. Within 2 weeks, Craig found himself blacklisted from every major dealership in a 50-mile radius. His applications disappeared into HR black holes. His phone calls went unreturned. His networking attempts died in polite but firm rejections. Meanwhile, Rob's surveillance revealed growing tension in the house he'd once called home. Through contacts at the utility companies, he learned that bills were going unpaid. Brenda's credit cards, which she'd been using to maintain their lifestyle while Craig looked for work, were approaching their limits. Tyler's calls became more frequent, though he tried to hide his growing concern behind casual conversation. "Hey Dad, how's the new place?" "It's fine. How's school?" "Good, good. Mom's been kind of stressed lately. Work stuff, you know." Rob knew it wasn't work stress, but he let Tyler maintain the fiction. The boy was starting to see cracks in the fantasy, and pushing too hard would only drive him back into Craig's camp. "She can always call if she needs to talk," Rob offered, knowing Brenda would never swallow her pride enough to make that call. "Yeah, maybe. Craig's been, I don't know, different lately. More irritable. He snapped at me yesterday for leaving my backpack in the living room." The honeymoon phase was ending, exactly as Rob had predicted. Craig's true nature was emerging under pressure, and Tyler was getting his first taste of what his mother had traded his father for. 3 weeks after Craig's termination, Rob implemented phase 2 of his plan. Using his security firm's resources, he discovered that Craig had been lying about his divorce settlement. He'd actually been ordered to pay substantial alimony to his ex-wife, payments he'd been dodging through creative employment arrangements and hidden assets. A single anonymous tip to the right family court clerk set the legal machinery in motion. Craig's ex-wife, armed with fresh information about his recent employment and current address, moved quickly to enforce the original judgment. Asset seizure orders arrived at 8:47 Oakmont Drive on a Tuesday morning, just as Brenda was leaving for work. She watched in horror as court officers began cataloging Craig's possessions: the big screen TV, the expensive sound system, even the leather furniture he'd used to impress her. Tyler called Rob that afternoon, his voice shaking. "Dad, something crazy is happening. There are people at the house taking Craig's stuff. They say he owes his ex-wife money." "That sounds complicated," Rob replied neutrally. "Mom's freaking out. She keeps asking Craig why he didn't tell her about this. And he's saying it's all a misunderstanding, But Tyler's voice dropped to a whisper. Dad, I think he lied to us about a lot of things. The doubt in his son's voice was music to Rob's ears, but he kept his response measured. People sometimes aren't who they appear to be. Yeah, I'm starting to figure that out. That evening, Rob received an unexpected visitor. Brenda stood at his apartment door, her appearance a stark contrast to the polished woman who'd dismissed him from his own home weeks earlier. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared, her clothes wrinkled as if she'd been crying. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice small and uncertain. Rob stepped aside, watching as she took in his Spartan living arrangement. The contrast to their former home was stark. No family photos, no comfortable furniture, no traces of the life they'd built together. "I need to ask you something," she began, then stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. "I'm listening. Did you have something to do with what's happening to Craig?" Rob's expression remained neutral. What's happening to Craig? His job, the legal problems, the way everyone in town seems to know our business all of a sudden. Her eyes searched his face desperately. "It's too convenient, Rob. Too perfectly timed. You think I'm sabotaging your boyfriend. I think you're angry, and I think you have resources that most people don't." Rob poured himself a glass of water, taking his time before responding. "Let me ask you something, Brenda. Did you really think there wouldn't be consequences? Did you honestly believe you could destroy our family and everyone would just accept it?" "I didn't destroy anything. We weren't happy, Rob. We haven't been happy for years. So you decided to fix that by having an affair with Tyler's baseball coach. In our house, while I was out of town working to support our family." Brenda flinched at the blunt summary. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this." "How was it supposed to happen? What was the plan exactly?" "You'd keep playing the devoted wife while fucking Craig on the side until you figured out how to get rid of me permanently." The crude language made her recoil, but Rob wasn't finished. "Or maybe the plan was to use Tyler to make me leave voluntarily, so you could play house with your new boyfriend without the messy complications of a legal divorce." Tyler made his own choice. Tyler is 17 years old. He made the choice you manipulated him into making, just like Craig manipulated you into destroying everything we built together. Brenda's composure finally cracked. "I loved you, Rob. I really did. But you were never here, never present even when you were home. Craig makes me feel alive again. And now? How do you feel now?" The question hung between them like a blade. Brenda's silence was answer enough. "Here's what's going to happen," Rob continued, his voice deadly calm. "You're going to go home to your boyfriend and figure out how to clean up the mess you've made. You're going to explain to Tyler why the man you chose over his father can't even pay his own bills. And you're going to learn what it feels like to be disappointed by someone you trusted." "Rob, please. We're done here, Brenda. You made your choice. Now live with it." After she left, Rob stood at his window watching her drive away in the car he'd helped her buy, heading back to the house he'd worked 15 years to afford, to comfort the man who'd helped destroy their family. Tomorrow, he would implement Phase 3. Tyler was almost ready to learn the final lesson about loyalty, betrayal, and the price of choosing the wrong side. Chapter 6. The Collapse. The call came at 2:47 a.m. on a Thursday, jolting Rob from the light sleep that had become his norm since moving out. Tyler's voice was panicked, barely controlled. "Dad, you need to come home. Something's wrong with Mom." Rob was in his truck within minutes, the familiar drive to his former house now feeling like enemy territory. He found Tyler pacing on the front lawn, still in his pajamas, his face pale in the streetlight. "She won't stop crying," Tyler said, his voice cracking. "She's been locked in the bathroom for 2 hours. Craig left around midnight after they had this huge fight, and she's been falling apart ever since." Through the upstairs window, Rob could hear the sound of sobbing, raw, broken sounds that cut through him despite everything that had happened. Whatever else Brenda had done, she was still the mother of his child. "Where's Craig now?" Rob asked. "I don't know. He threw some clothes in a bag and just left. Said he needed space to think." Tyler's laugh was bitter. "Guess that's what Mom meant when she said people deserve to be happy, right?" Rob led Tyler back into the house, noting the details that spoke of lives unraveling. Dishes stacked in the sink, mail piled unopened on the counter, Tyler's schoolbooks scattered across the kitchen table as if abandoned mid-homework. The house that had once been a sanctuary now felt hollow, temporary. "Mom," Tyler called through the bathroom door. "Dad's here." The sobbing stopped abruptly. After a long moment, Brenda's voice came through the door, raw and defeated. Rob, I'm here. I'm so sorry. I'm so fucking sorry about everything. Tyler flinched at his mother's language, the desperation in her voice. This wasn't the composed woman who'd orchestrated Rob's exile from his own home. This was someone who'd finally seen the consequences of her choices. Open the door, Brenda. She emerged looking like a ghost of herself, makeup streaked, hair matted, wearing the same clothes she'd had on during their conversation at his apartment. In her hand was a crumpled piece of paper. He left this, she said, holding it out like evidence of her own stupidity. Rob read Craig's note with clinical detachment. It was a masterpiece of cowardice disguised as consideration, explaining how the legal and financial pressures were too much stress, how he needed to focus on rebuilding his life, how Brenda and Tyler deserved better than the chaos his presence had brought into their lives. Not a word about love, not a mention of the promises he'd made, no acknowledgement of the family he'd helped destroy. Just polite, empty phrases that absolved him of all responsibility while making his abandonment sound noble. He's gone, Brenda whispered. Just like that. Like we never mattered at all. Tyler stood frozen in the hallway, staring at his mother's breakdown with the horrified fascination of someone watching a car accident. This was his first real lesson in adult disillusionment, and Rob could see the boy struggling to process what he was witnessing. I need to ask you something, Rob said to Tyler, his voice gentle but firm. When Craig was here, when he was promising you cars and college funds and a better life, did you ever wonder where that money was going to come from? Tyler's face flushed. He said he was successful. He had a nice house, nice things. He had those things because he was stealing from his employer and hiding assets from his ex-wife. The man you chose as a role model over your own father is a thief and a deadbeat who ran away the minute things got difficult. The words hit Tyler like physical blows. You did this, he said suddenly, his voice rising. You sabotaged him. You made all this happen because you were jealous. I exposed him, Rob corrected. There's a difference. Craig destroyed himself with his own actions. I just made sure everyone could see who he really was. But if you hadn't interfered, he would have continued lying to you and your mother until he got bored and moved on to his next victims. At least this way, you learned the truth. Brenda looked up from the note, her eyes hollow. How long have you known? About Craig's lies, his debts, everything? Since the first week you started seeing him. And you didn't warn me. Would you have listened? The silence that followed was answer enough. Brenda looked around the house, their house, as if seeing it for the first time. The mortgage payments she couldn't make alone, the utility bills piling up, the property taxes due next month. Without Rob's income and Craig's empty promises, the financial reality was stark and immediate. What happens now? Tyler asked, his voice small and uncertain. Rob studied his son's face, seeing the boy he'd raised beneath the rebellious teenager who'd helped drive him from his home. The lesson was almost complete, but Tyler needed to understand the full weight of his choices. Now you learn what consequences feel like, Rob said. Your mother can't afford this house on her own. Her credit cards are maxed out from trying to maintain a lifestyle with Craig. She'll probably have to sell and find something smaller, somewhere cheaper. What about college? Tyler's voice cracked. Craig was going to help with applications, maybe get me a scholarship through his connections. Craig's connections got him fired and blacklisted from every dealership in the area. His promises were as empty as everything else about him. Tyler sank onto the couch, the full magnitude of his situation finally hitting home. So what? I just don't get to go to college now. You might. Your grades are decent, and there are student loans, community college, lots of options. But you'll have to work for them instead of having them handed to you by someone else's husband. The cruel accuracy of the statement made Tyler wince. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, he seemed to fully grasp what his family had lost in their pursuit of something shinier and easier. Brenda was crying again, quieter now, but with the helpless desperation of someone who'd finally run out of options. Rob, I know I have no right to ask, but Tyler, he's still your son. Whatever you think of me, don't punish him for my mistakes. Rob looked at his wife, his soon-to-be ex-wife, and felt something that might have been pity. She'd traded 15 years of marriage and financial security for a few months of excitement with a man who'd abandoned her at the first sign of trouble. Tyler made his own choices, Rob said. When I was packing my things, when he was helping Craig take over my house, when he chose sides in this war you started, Those were his decisions. Now he gets to live with them. Dad, please, Tyler said, desperation creeping into his voice. I know I screwed up. I know I said things, did things, but I'm still your son. Are you? Rob asked. Because 3 weeks ago, when you needed me to disappear so your new father figure could move in, I didn't feel like your father. I felt like an obstacle you couldn't wait to get rid of. The words hit their target with devastating accuracy. Tyler's face crumpled as the full weight of his betrayal became clear. I was 17, he whispered. I was stupid and 17, and I thought Craig was cool, and you were. You were always so serious, so strict. I just wanted something different. Different, Rob repeated. Well, congratulations. You got it. As dawn broke over the suburban street where Rob had once believed he'd found happiness, he prepared to leave his family to face the consequences of their choices alone. They'd wanted him gone, and now they'd gotten their wish in ways they never could have imagined. The final lesson was about to begin. Chapter 7, The Reckoning Call. 1 week later, Rob's phone rang at 11:43 p.m. He almost didn't answer. Tyler's name on the caller ID had become a source of grim satisfaction rather than parental concern. But something in the timing, the desperation of a call this late, made him swipe to accept. Tyler's voice was barely recognizable through the sobbing. Dad, please help. I'm sorry for everything. Please, I need you. Rob set down his book and walked to his window, looking out at the anonymous parking lot of his temporary home. What's wrong, Tyler? Mom tried to kill herself. The words hit Rob like a physical blow, but his voice remained steady. What happened? She took pills. A whole bottle of sleeping pills. I found her on the kitchen floor when I got home from work. Tyler's words tumbled over each other in panicked clusters. The paramedics are here now. They're taking her to the hospital. Dad, I don't know what to do. Rob was already reaching for his keys. Which hospital? St. Mary's. Dad, I'm scared. I can't lose her too. The phrase, too, hung in the air like an accusation. Tyler had lost his father through his own choices, and now faced losing his mother to the consequences of hers. Rob should have felt vindicated. This was exactly the lesson he'd wanted his family to learn. Instead, he felt hollow. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The emergency room was a fluorescent-lit purgatory of worried faces and antiseptic smells. Tyler sat in a plastic chair, still wearing his work uniform from the auto shop, his eyes red and swollen. He looked up when Rob approached, and for a moment, he was just a scared 17-year-old boy who needed his father. The doctors said she's stable, Tyler reported, his voice hoarse. They pumped her stomach, gave her some kind of medicine to counteract the pills. But Dad, there was a note. Rob accepted the crumpled paper Tyler handed him. Brenda's handwriting was shaky, desperate. I can't live with what I've done to our family. Rob, you were right about everything. Craig, the choices I made, the way I treated you. I destroyed the only good thing in my life, and I can't fix it. Tyler, I'm sorry I failed you as a mother. You deserved better than the mess I made of everything. Maybe you'll both be better off without me. She left this on the kitchen counter, Tyler whispered, right next to a photo of our last family vacation. Remember that trip to Yellowstone? She kept that picture on the counter through everything, even when Craig was living there. Rob remembered. It had been 2 years ago, before the affairs and lies and betrayals. Tyler had been 15, still young enough to be excited about geysers and wildlife. Brenda had laughed at Rob's meticulous planning, teased him about his color-coded itinerary, but she'd also held his hand during the sunset over Grand Prismatic Spring. The doctor wants to talk to family, Tyler continued. About getting her help. Psychiatric evaluation, maybe inpatient treatment. But Dad, we can't afford, his voice broke. I can't handle this alone. Rob studied his son's face, seeing the child he'd raised beneath the teenager who'd chosen Craig's promises over his father's love. Tyler looked exhausted, overwhelmed, utterly defeated. The swagger and defiance from a month ago had been replaced by desperate vulnerability. You chose your sides, Tyler, Rob said quietly. You told me to leave. You helped Craig take over my house, my family. You made it clear that you didn't need me. Tyler's face crumpled. I know I did all that, and I know I have no right to ask for anything. But Dad, she's my mom. And despite everything, she's still the woman you married. The woman you loved for 15 years. The woman who betrayed me for 15 years. No, Tyler said with sudden conviction. She betrayed you for a few months. She loved you for 15 years. Then she got confused and made terrible choices. But the love was real, Dad. I saw it. We all did. A doctor approached their corner of the waiting room, a tired-looking woman in scrubs with kind eyes and professional competence. Mr. Mitchell? I'm Dr. Sarah Chun. I need to discuss your wife's condition and treatment options. Rob almost corrected her about their marital status, then realized that in the eyes of the law, they were still married, still next of kin, still responsible for each other despite everything that had happened. She's going to need intensive psychiatric care, Dr. Chin explained. This wasn't a cry for help. She took enough pills to be serious about dying. She needs medication adjustment, therapy, probably a minimum 30-day inpatient program. Will she be okay? Tyler asked. With proper treatment, yes. But she needs family support. Someone who can make medical decisions, handle insurance, provide stability during recovery. Tyler looked at his father with desperate hope. Dad. Rob closed his eyes, feeling the weight of 15 years of marriage, of love turned to betrayal, of dreams that had curdled into nightmares. Brenda had destroyed their family, chosen another man over their marriage, manipulated their son into betraying his father. But she'd also been his wife, the mother of his child, the woman who'd once promised to love him in sickness and in health, for better or worse. I need to see her, Rob said finally. Brenda looked small and fragile in the hospital bed, her lines threading from her arms, monitors beeping softly in the background. Her face was pale, her hair lank against the pillow. She opened her eyes when Rob entered, and the shame and regret he saw there was almost unbearable. You came, she whispered. Tyler called. I didn't think, after everything I did to you, to us. I didn't think you'd care if I lived or died. Rob pulled a chair next to her bed and sat down heavily. Do you remember our wedding vows, Brenda? She closed her eyes, tears leaking from the corners. For better or worse, in sickness and in health. Till death do us part. But I broke those vows. I broke everything. Yes, you did. Rob's voice was matter of fact, without anger or accusation. You destroyed our marriage, manipulated our son, chose another man over our family. You did all of that. Brenda's shoulders shook with silent sobs. But, Rob continued, you're still Tyler's mother. And despite everything, I'm not ready to let you die. Hope flickered in her eyes, quickly replaced by confusion. What does that mean? It means I'll make sure you get the help you need. I'll handle the medical decisions, the insurance, the logistics. Tyler needs his mother alive and healthy, even if our marriage is over. Over, she repeated, the finality of it hitting her like a physical blow. Did you think it could be any other way? After Craig, after using Tyler to throw me out of my own house. I hoped. I prayed that maybe if I could prove how sorry I was. Some things can't be fixed, Brenda. Some betrayals are permanent. She nodded, understanding finally settling over her features. But you'll help with Tyler? Make sure he has a chance at college, at a future? Rob looked through the window at his son, who was pacing the hallway with the restless energy of barely contained panic. Tyler made his choices too. He chose Craig over me, chose easy promises over hard work. He needs to learn that actions have consequences. He's 17, Rob. He's just a kid who got caught up in adult problems. He's old enough to understand loyalty and betrayal, old enough to live with his decisions. Brenda's eyes widened with something approaching horror. You're really going to abandon him? Your own son? I'm going to let him learn what it means to choose sides in a war. He picked yours and Craig's. Now he gets to see what that victory looks like. Rob stood, looking down at the woman who'd once been the center of his world. I'll make sure you get the psychiatric care you need. I'll keep Tyler from making any more catastrophic mistakes while you're recovering. But when you're released, you and he will figure out your lives without me. Rob, please. You chose your sides, he said, echoing the words he'd spoken to Tyler weeks earlier. Now live with it. As Rob walked toward the door, Brenda's voice followed him, broken and desperate. I loved you. I really did love you. Rob paused at the threshold without turning around. I know you did. That's what makes this so much worse. In the hallway, Tyler looked up expectantly. Dad? Is she? She's going to live. I'm going to make sure she gets proper treatment. Relief flooded Tyler's face. Thank you. I knew you'd. But after that, you're on your own. The relief died instantly. What do you mean? I mean exactly what I said weeks ago. You made your choice. You chose Craig and your mother over me. You chose easy promises over hard work, chose to help destroy our family rather than defend it. Now you get to live with those consequences. Dad, I was wrong. I know I was wrong. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't rebuild 15 years of marriage. Sorry doesn't undo betrayal. Sorry doesn't make me your father again after you chose someone else for that role. Tyler's face went white. You can't mean that. 6 weeks ago, I would have died for you. I would have sacrificed everything to give you a better life. But you didn't want that, father. You wanted Craig. So go find him. Craig's gone. He abandoned us. Then I guess you learned something about choosing the wrong hero. Rob walked toward the exit, leaving his son standing alone in the fluorescent-lit hallway. Behind him, he could hear Tyler calling out, his voice cracking with desperation. Dad, please. I need you. I'm sorry for everything. But Rob didn't turn around. Some lessons could only be learned through complete abandonment, and his family had chosen to abandon him first. Now they would understand what that felt like. Chapter 8. The Final Judgment. 3 weeks later, Rob received a call that would define the rest of his relationship with his former family. Tyler's voice was different now, older, worn down by the realities of adult responsibility and consequence. Dad, I need to tell you something. About Mom's treatment, about everything that's been happening. Rob set down his morning coffee and listened as his son described the past 21 days. Brenda's psychiatric evaluation had revealed the depth of her breakdown, severe depression, anxiety, and a devastating recognition of how completely she'd destroyed her life. The recommended treatment was extensive: 6 months of intensive therapy, medication adjustments, and supervised transition back to independent living. The thing is, Tyler continued, his voice carefully controlled, insurance won't cover all of it. The house is in foreclosure. We can't make the payments without your income. Mom's job at the marketing firm, they let her go when she missed too much work during the hospitalization. Rob absorbed this information without surprise. He'd anticipated this call, had even wondered what took Tyler so long to make it. What exactly are you asking me, Tyler? The pause stretched uncomfortably long. I'm begging you to help us. Not for Mom. I know she doesn't deserve it. But for me. I'm your son, and I can't handle this alone. You're 18 next month, Rob observed. Legally an adult. Old enough to make your own decisions and live with them. Dad, please. I've learned my lesson. I understand now what Craig really was, what Mom did to our family. I understand what I lost when I chose them over you. Do you? Yes. I lost my father. I lost the one person who actually cared about my future instead of just using me to get what they wanted. Rob could hear the tears in Tyler's voice, but he'd hardened his heart against his son's pain. This was the lesson Tyler needed to learn completely. You're right, Rob said. You did lose your father. You threw him away for promises from a man who abandoned you the moment things got difficult. I know I did that, and I hate myself for it. But Dad, I'm trying to make it right. I'm working full-time at the shop, trying to keep Mom's medical bills paid. I dropped out of high school to work more hours. This information hit Rob unexpectedly hard. Tyler dropping out meant no graduation, no college, no future beyond minimum wage manual labor. It was exactly the kind of sacrifice Rob would have moved heaven and earth to prevent, back when he still considered Tyler his son. Dropping out was stupid, Rob said bluntly. I didn't have a choice. Mom needs care, and someone has to pay for it. You had choices. You chose poorly, just like you chose Craig over your family. Tyler's voice cracked with frustration. What was I supposed to do? Let her die? Let her end up homeless because she can't work? You were supposed to think about consequences before you helped destroy our family. You were supposed to be loyal to the man who raised you instead of the one offering you easy rewards. The silence that followed was filled with Tyler's quiet sobbing. When he spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. I can't do this alone, Dad. I'm 18 years old. I have no education, no money, no idea how to navigate Mom's medical care or the legal stuff with the house. I'm drowning. Then you should have thought about that before you chose sides. How many times do I have to say I'm sorry? How many times do I have to admit I was wrong? This isn't about apologies, Tyler. This is about understanding that some mistakes can't be undone. You wanted Craig as your father figure. Well, he's gone. You wanted me out of your life. Congratulations, you got what you wanted. I was 17 and stupid. You were 17 and old enough to understand loyalty. Old enough to know the difference between right and wrong. Old enough to see what Craig was doing to our family and choose to help him instead of stopping him. Tyler was openly crying now, the sound of complete defeat. So that's it. You're really going to let your own son destroy his life because he made a mistake as a teenager. I'm going to let you live with the consequences of betraying your father. That's what you chose, Tyler. You chose Craig's empty promises over my love. You chose to help another man take over my house, my wife, my family. You chose to make me the enemy. But I was wrong. Yes, you were. And being wrong has consequences. Being disloyal has consequences. Betraying the people who love you has consequences. Rob could hear Tyler struggling to breathe between sobs. Dad, please. I'll do anything. I'll make it up to you somehow. Just don't abandon me like Craig did. I'm not abandoning you, Tyler. I'm giving you exactly what you asked for when you helped throw me out of my own house. You wanted independence from your strict, serious father. You wanted the fun, easy relationship Craig promised. Well, Craig's gone, and now you get to be independent. This isn't what I wanted. It's what you chose. I was a kid making a stupid decision based on what I thought would make me happy. And now you're an adult living with that decision. Welcome to the real world. Tyler's voice became desperate, pleading. What about Mom? Are you really going to let her suffer because of what she did? Your mother made her choices too. She chose Craig over our marriage. She chose to use you to manipulate me out of my own home. She chose passion over stability, excitement over loyalty. Now she gets to live in the world those choices created. She's sick, Dad. Mentally ill. She wasn't thinking clearly. She was thinking clearly enough to plan her affair. Clearly enough to coordinate with Craig about when to make me leave. Clearly enough to turn my own son against me. The call went quiet except for Tyler's ragged breathing. When he spoke again, his voice held a different quality, not just desperation, but a kind of broken understanding. You're never going to forgive us, are you? No matter what we do, no matter how sorry we are, you're never going to be our family again. No, Rob said simply. I'm not. Because you can't, or because you won't. Rob considered the question carefully. Because forgiveness would require me to pretend that what you did wasn't as bad as it was. It would require me to accept that my wife's betrayal and my son's disloyalty were just mistakes that can be overlooked. They were mistakes. They were choices. Deliberate, calculated choices that destroyed everything I built and sacrificed for. You didn't accidentally help Craig take over my family, Tyler. You didn't mistakenly choose his promises over my love. You made conscious decisions, and those decisions have permanent consequences. Tyler was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was hollow with defeat. So this is how it ends? Mom in psychiatric care, me working minimum wage with no education, you living alone in some apartment across town? This is what our family becomes. This is what your choices made our family become. And there's nothing I can do to change it. You can learn from it. You can make better choices in your next relationships. You can remember what happens when you betray the people who love you. But I can't have my father back. No, you can't. The finality of it seemed to settle over Tyler like a weight. I love you, Dad. I know I don't deserve to, and I know you don't care anymore, but I love you. Rob closed his eyes, feeling something that might have been pain or might have been relief. I know you do, Tyler. But love without loyalty is worthless, and you chose disloyalty when it mattered most. After hanging up, Rob sat in his sparse apartment and reviewed the past 6 months of his life. His marriage was over, his son was lost to him, his former home was in foreclosure. By any conventional measure, he should have felt defeated. Instead, he felt free. He'd learned who he could trust and who he couldn't. He'd discovered that the family he'd sacrificed everything to protect had been willing to sacrifice him for newer, shinier promises. Most importantly, he'd proven to himself that Robert Mitchell was nobody's victim. His phone buzzed with a text message from Tyler. I understand now why you can't forgive us. I just want you to know that losing you is the worst consequence of all the stupid things I did. I'm sorry, Dad. For everything. Rob read the message twice, then deleted it without responding. Some lessons were too important to dilute with false hope. Chapter 9. The Price of Victory. 6 months later, Rob stood in the office of Harrison and Associates Family Law, signing the final divorce papers that would legally end his 15-year marriage to Brenda. The settlement was exactly what he demanded. She would keep nothing except her personal belongings and half of their remaining savings, which amounted to less than $3,000 after legal fees and her medical expenses. Your wife has agreed to all terms, Attorney Margaret Harrison informed him. No spousal support, no claim to your business assets, no shared custody arrangements. She's also agreed to your request that all communication go through legal counsel. Rob nodded, his signature decisive and final on each page. Through the law office windows, he could see Tyler waiting in the parking lot beside an old Honda Civic that had seen better days. The boy, young man now, had lost weight over the past months, his face lean with the kind of hunger that came from working multiple jobs to survive. Tyler had managed to get his GED. Rob had learned through mutual acquaintances. He was working 40 hours a week at the auto shop and taking night classes at the community college, trying to build some kind of future from the ruins of his choices. Brenda had completed her psychiatric treatment and was living in a small apartment across town, working as a receptionist at a dental office, the only job she could find that didn't require references from her previous employer. They were surviving, but barely. They were also learning what life looked like without the safety net Rob had provided for years, the financial stability, the problem-solving, the quiet strength that had held their family together even when they'd been too blind to see it. "There is one more matter," Harrison said, pulling out a sealed envelope. "Mrs. Mitchell asked me to give you this when the paperwork was finalized." Rob accepted the letter but didn't open it. Whatever Brenda had to say, he'd heard enough apologies and explanations to last a lifetime. Outside, Tyler approached hesitantly as Rob walked toward his truck. The boy's work clothes were clean but worn, his hands permanently stained with motor oil. He looked older than his 19 years, aged by responsibility and consequence. "Dad, could I talk to you for just a minute?" Rob stopped walking but didn't turn around. "What is it, Tyler?" "I wanted you to know that I understand now. What you gave us, what we threw away. I understand why you can't forgive us." "Do you?" "Yeah. You were the foundation of our family, and we decided we didn't need a foundation. We wanted something flashier, easier, more exciting. And when the foundation was gone," Tyler's voice trailed off. "The whole structure collapsed," Rob finished. "Exactly. Mom's been getting better, but she'll never be the same. The guilt is eating her alive. And me? I'm learning what it's like to be completely on your own in the world." Rob finally turned to face his son. Tyler looked exhausted, older, worn down by the realities of adult life, without a safety net. But there was something else in his expression, a hardness that hadn't been there before, a recognition of how cruel the world could be to people who made poor choices. "Is that what you wanted to tell me?" "I wanted to tell you that I'm proud to be your son, even if you can't be proud of me anymore. Everything I learned about strength, about integrity, about not giving up when things get hard, I learned that from you. And even though I betrayed those lessons, they're still part of who I am." Rob studied Tyler's face, looking for manipulation or false sentiment. Instead, he saw genuine maturity, the kind that only came from suffering real consequences. "What are you going to do now?" Rob asked. "Keep working, keep going to school. Try to build something from nothing, the way you did when you left the military. Maybe someday I'll be half the man you are." "And your mother?" "She's surviving. The therapy helped, but she knows what she lost. She knows that Craig was just using her, that she destroyed the best thing in her life for someone who never cared about her at all." Tyler's voice grew quiet. "She asks about you sometimes, not asking me to reach out or anything, just wondering if you're okay." Rob looked at his son one final time, seeing the boy he'd raised overlaid with the young man who'd chosen betrayal over loyalty. Tyler was learning what consequences felt like, was growing up in the harsh school of real-world failure and struggle. It was exactly what he deserved. "Goodbye, Tyler." Rob drove away without looking back, leaving his former family to navigate their new reality without him. In his rearview mirror, he caught a glimpse of Tyler standing alone in the parking lot, and for just a moment, he felt something that might have been regret. Then he remembered coming home to find his belongings in trash bags, remembered his son's sneer as he told his father to pack faster, remembered Brenda laughing upstairs with her lover while they planned Rob's exile from his own home. The regret passed. That evening, in his apartment that had gradually become less temporary and more home, Rob finally opened Brenda's letter. Her handwriting was steadier now, more controlled than the desperate scrawl of her suicide note months earlier. "Rob, I know you'll never read this, but I need to write it anyway. I need to tell you that you were right about everything. Craig was using me, using Tyler, using our marriage as a way to get what he wanted. You saw through him immediately, and instead of listening to you, I chose to believe his lies because they made me feel young and desired again. I threw away 15 years of love and stability for a few months of excitement with a man who abandoned me the moment things got difficult. I manipulated our son into betraying his father because I was too cowardly to face you myself. I destroyed our family for someone who never cared about our family at all. The worst part is that I knew, even while I was doing it, that I was making a terrible mistake. But I was addicted to feeling wanted, to the thrill of being pursued, to the fantasy that I could have passion without consequences. I chose immediate gratification over everything we'd built together. Tyler blames himself for choosing Craig over you, but the truth is that I manipulated him into making that choice. I used our son as a weapon against you, and now we're both paying the price for my selfishness. I know you'll never forgive me. I know our marriage is over, and I know I'll never get the chance to be the wife you deserved. But I need you to know that losing you has taught me what real love looked like. It looked like you working 2 jobs when Tyler was little so I could stay home with him. It looked like you fixing everything that broke in our house, handling every crisis, providing the stability that let me feel safe enough to be reckless. Real love looked like you planning our family vacations down to the smallest detail because you wanted us to have perfect memories. It looked like you staying up all night when Tyler had pneumonia, monitoring his breathing while I slept. It looked like 15 years of quiet, steady devotion that I was too stupid to value until it was gone. Craig offered me excitement, but you gave me a life. Craig made me feel desired, but you made me feel secure. Craig promised me passion, but you gave me a home. I chose the wrong man, Rob. I chose the flashy lie over the steady truth, and I'll regret that choice for the rest of my life. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect another chance. I just needed you to know that I finally understand what I lost, and it was everything. Forever sorry, Brenda. Rob read the letter twice, then walked to his kitchen and fed it into the garbage disposal. Words were cheap, and Brenda's apologies wouldn't rebuild the family she'd destroyed or restore the trust she'd shattered. His phone rang as he was preparing dinner, a simple meal for one, the kind of efficient sustenance he'd perfected during his years alone. The caller ID showed Danny Kowalski's name. How'd it go today, brother? It's done, Rob replied. Divorce is final. Good. You ready to start living again? Rob considered the question as he looked around his apartment. It was small but comfortable, organized with military precision, decorated with photos of his Marine unit and mementos from his security consulting business. It was a life built for one person, free from the complications of people who might betray him. I'm living now, he said finally. You know what I mean. You've proven your point, taught them all a lesson they'll never forget. But holding on to anger is like grabbing a hot coal. It burns you more than anyone else. I'm not angry anymore, Rob realized as he said it. I'm just free. Free from what? Free from worrying about people who don't deserve my worry. Free from protecting people who were willing to betray me. Free from trying to hold together a family that was ready to throw me away for someone else's promises. Danny was quiet for a moment. That's a cold way to live, Rob. It's an honest way to live. I spent 15 years building something that could be destroyed by a smooth-talking car salesman and a few months of midlife crisis. I'm not making that mistake again. So what's next? Rob looked out his window at the city lights, at the anonymous urban landscape where he'd rebuilt his life from scratch. Somewhere out there, his ex-wife was learning to live on a receptionist's salary. His son was working multiple jobs and taking night classes, trying to build a future without the foundation his father had provided for 18 years. They were both learning what life looked like without Robert Mitchell's protection, his problem-solving, his quiet strength. They were discovering the difference between a man who made promises and a man who kept them. Next, I focus on clients who pay me to solve their problems instead of family members who created them, Rob said. Next, I build relationships with people who understand loyalty. Next, I live my life for people who deserve it. Including yourself? Rob smiled, the first genuine smile he'd managed in months. Especially myself. After hanging up, Rob opened his laptop and reviewed his business accounts. Mitchell Security Consulting had grown substantially over the past year, fed by his laser focus on work and his reputation for handling delicate situations with absolute discretion. He had enough money to buy a house now, to start over completely. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Dad, I know you won't respond, but I wanted you to know I got accepted to transfer to State University next fall. Full scholarship based on my grades and work experience. I thought you'd want to know that the lessons you taught me about perseverance are paying off. I love you. Tyler. Rob read the message, felt a flicker of something that might have been pride or might have been sadness, then deleted it without responding. Tyler was learning to succeed without his father's help, just as he'd chosen to live without his father's love. The boy was discovering that the values Rob had instilled in him, hard work, determination, integrity, were more valuable than any inheritance or safety net. It was a good lesson for Tyler to learn. It was also proof that Rob had raised his son well, even if that son had chosen to betray him. But knowledge of Tyler's success didn't change anything. Rob had drawn his lines, established his boundaries, made his choices based on principles that couldn't be compromised. Some betrayals were permanent. Some lessons couldn't be softened with forgiveness. As he prepared for bed in his orderly, peaceful apartment, Rob felt the satisfaction of a mission completed successfully. He'd taught his family what happened when they chose sides against him. He'd shown them the difference between a man who made promises and a man who kept them. Most importantly, he'd proven to himself that Robert Mitchell was nobody's victim, nobody's fool, nobody's disposable convenience. His family had learned what it meant to betray him. Now they could spend the rest of their lives living with that knowledge. The war was over, and Rob had won. The victory tasted exactly like he'd imagined it would, cold, complete, and absolutely final. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.